Serial killers, individuals who haunt our nightmares with crimes so terrifying they've left a permanent mark on history. Some were master manipulators, while others unleashed unimaginable brutality on their victims. But what makes these individuals turn into monsters? Today we're diving into the twisted minds of the top 5 worst serial killers of all time. We start our list with one of the most infamous names in American criminal history, Ted Bundy. Charming, educated, and seemingly normal, Bundy used his good looks and charisma to lure unsuspecting women to their deaths. Active in the 1970s, Bundy confessed to the murders of over 30 women across 7 states, though authorities believe the true number may be much higher. Ted Bundy was a master manipulator. He would often feign injury, using crutches or pretending to be disabled, to gain the sympathy of his victims. Once they were within his grasp, he would abduct them, often using a weapon, before torturing and brutally murdering them. Bundy's methods were chillingly efficient. After killing his victims, he would sometimes revisit the crime scenes to engage in necrophilia, further showcasing his psychopathic tendencies. Bundy's upbringing seemed ordinary, but beneath the surface, there were dark undertones. Born in 1946, Bundy's biological father was unknown, and he was raised by his grandparents under the pretense that they were his parents, while his biological mother posed as his sister. This early deception and feelings of abandonment may have contributed to his later sociopathy. As a young man, Bundy developed a deep resentment toward women, especially after a painful breakup, which many believe fueled his violent tendencies. With a facade of intelligence and charm, Ted Bundy evaded capture for years. But in 1978, after escaping prison twice, his killing spree came to an end when he was finally apprehended. Bundy was executed in 1989, but his legacy of terror remains deeply etched in criminal history. At number 4 is the Soviet Union's most notorious serial killer, Andrei Chikatilo, nicknamed the Butcher of Rostov. Chikatilo terrorized Russia for over 12 years, killing at least 52 people, most of them women and children. His crimes were particularly gruesome, marked by unspeakable acts of mutilation. Chikatilo's tactics were monstrous. He would lure his victims to secluded areas, often under the guise of offering them help or food. Once alone, he would violently attack, stabbing, strangling, and often mutilating their bodies. His obsession with control extended beyond killing. Chikatilo would engage in cannibalism and sexually assault his victims post-mortem, making him one of the most sadistic killers in modern history. Chikatilo's early life was marked by trauma and hardship. Born in Ukraine in 1936 during a time of severe famine, his family was devastated by hunger. It's said that his mother told him his brother was kidnapped and eaten by starving neighbors. Growing up in such an environment of fear and scarcity, combined with his inability to form normal relationships, likely contributed to his violent and deviant behavior. In 1990, after years of terrorizing the Soviet Union, Chikatilo was caught and sentenced to death. His crimes shocked a nation already reeling from social and political turmoil, and he was executed by gunshot in 1994. Number 3 on our list is John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown. Active in the 1970s, Gacy brutally murdered at least 33 young boys and men, burying most of them beneath his own home in suburban Chicago. Gacy's terrifying double life as both a respected community member and a ruthless killer horrified the world. Gacy's methods were cold and calculated. He would lure teenage boys to his home under the pretense of offering them a job or hosting a party. Once there, he would overpower them, handcuffing and sexually assaulting them before strangling them to death. Gacy took pleasure in taunting his victims, often dressing as Pogo the Clown at children's parties, adding a grotesque layer to his public persona. Gacy was born in 1942 to an abusive father who constantly berated him. Growing up, Gacy struggled with his sexuality, repressing his desires in a conservative environment. This internal conflict, combined with his violent upbringing, likely played a role in the development of his predatory behaviors. Gacy's crimes were eventually uncovered in 1978, after one of his victims managed to escape. He was sentenced to death and executed by lethal injection in 1994, but the horrors he inflicted will never be forgotten. At number 1 we have Jeffrey Dahmer, also known as the Milwaukee Cannibal. Dahmer's crimes are some of the most horrifying in history. Between 1978 and 1991, he murdered and dismembered 17 young men, engaging in acts of necrophilia and cannibalism. Dahmer's murder tactics were methodical and deeply disturbing. He would lure men back to his apartment, where he would drug and strangle them. Afterward, Dahmer would dismember their bodies, often keeping parts as souvenirs and consuming their flesh. His desire to control and dominate his victims even led him to attempt creating zombies by drilling holes into their skulls and injecting acid. Dahmer's early life was marked by a growing sense of isolation. Born in 1960 in Wisconsin, he was described as a quiet and withdrawn child, often fascinated by dead animals. His parents' turbulent relationship and subsequent divorce further alienated Dahmer, who began fantasizing about violence and control at a young age. Dahmer's spree came to an end in 1991, when one of his would-be victims escaped and alerted the police. Inside Dahmer's apartment, they discovered a scene of horror. Human remains, photographs of dismembered bodies, and chilling evidence of cannibalism. In 1992, Dahmer was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms in prison for his horrific crimes. But even in captivity, Dahmer's story didn't end there. In 1994, he was beaten to death by a fellow inmate, bringing an end to one of the darkest chapters in modern criminal history. Dahmer's reign of terror remains one of the most chilling examples of how a seemingly ordinary person can harbor unimaginable darkness. His crimes shocked not only America but the world, with the horrifying nature of his actions leaving a scar that will never fully heal. From charming manipulators to brutal predators, these 5 serial killers represent the worst of humanity. Their methods were calculated, their motives often unfathomable, and their actions left devastation in their wake. But what can we learn from these monsters? Perhaps it's the reminder that evil can sometimes hide in plain sight, lurking beneath the surface of those who seem all too normal. Thank you for watching. The stories of these killers are horrifying, but they also serve as a reminder to always be vigilant and aware of those around us. Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into true crime and history. Stay safe and stay informed.